Mark chapter 4, verse 26 to 34, it reads as follows. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter seed upon the ground, and should sleep and rise day and night, and the seed should sprout and grow. He knows not how. The earth produces of itself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. But when the grain is ripe, at once he puts in the sickle, because the harvest has come." And he said, "With what can we compare the kingdom of God? Or what parable shall we use for it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which, when sown upon the ground, is the smallest of all the seeds of the earth. Yet when it is sown, it grows up and becomes the greatest of all shrubs, and puts forth large branches, so that the birds of the air can make nests in its shade." With many such parables he spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples he explained everything. All right, so let's pause there for just a minute. Notice a couple of elements of this gospel text. I'll start with the end first. Mark states very clearly that Jesus' characteristic mode of discourse at this stage in his ministry is to teach in parables. He even goes so far as to say that this was the exclusive mode of Jesus' discourse when he was in Galilee. He did not speak to them without a parable, meaning he only used parables. And then in private, he would explain to the disciples what the parables meant. So that second part of Mark's saying shows something significant about parables. Although nowadays it is commonly said that Jesus used parables so that everyone could understand them, the Gospels say the opposite. The Gospels depict the parables of Jesus as riddles that were in fact difficult to understand, as proverbs that needed someone to unpack them, that needed someone to explain them in order for their meaning to be made clear. And this is something particular to Mark's Gospel. It's really important. It's not in the reading for today, but elsewhere Jesus is going to say at the beginning of this chapter, when the disciples ask him, "Why do you speak in parables?" Jesus is going to say, "Because to you has been given the mystery of the kingdom, but for those outside, everything comes in parables." In other words, the parables are meant to function as riddles, right? They are meant to kind of draw you into the mystery of the kingdom by both revealing some aspect of it. They are meant to teach something, but at the same time that they reveal, they also conceal. There's a mysterious element to all of the parables of Jesus. And the same thing is true of the two parables for today's reading. So let's take a moment to look at each one of them. The first parable there that we read was called the parable of the growing seed, or the parable of the seed growing secretly. Now this is really important that this is in the lectionary, because this parable is unique to Mark's gospel. Kind of interesting there. It's only found in the Gospel of Mark. That's one of the reasons the church has put it in the lectionary. As we're walking through Mark's gospel, she tries to highlight for us certain aspects of Mark's gospel that are unique. And there aren't very many of them. So it's significant that this parable is put in the lectionary. Okay, with that said, the parable is so short that it's kind of difficult to interpret exactly what the main meaning is. And you'll see this in the different names given to the parable. So the way people name this parable will also often reveal what they think the main point of the parable is. So for example, one common name is the parable of the seed growing secretly. So obviously people who name it that think that the main point of the parable is the kingdom grows secretly. In other words, that the way the kingdom spreads throughout the world is mysterious, just like the way a plant grows is mysterious. And you might think, well, wait, what's mysterious about a plant growth? Well, plant a garden sometime and you'll see what I'm talking about here. Anyone who's ever worked with agriculture or worked with trying to nurture a plant will notice that the growth of a plant, although there are certain things we know to do in order to foster the growth, like fertilize it and water it, at the end of the day, it's a mysterious process, right? As Jesus says, the seed sprouts and grows, he knows not how, and the earth produces of itself. So there's a real sense in which there's a power, there's a hidden power within the plant itself that is really beyond our control and beyond our complete ability to explain it. So some people think that's the main point of the parable. It's that the kingdom is like a plant. As it spreads, as it grows throughout the world, it does so from an innate power which is invisible to us and which is, in some senses, incomprehensible to us. It goes beyond our ability to explain it. Think here, for example, of the historical fact that the Catholic Church today, which has over 1 billion members, began with 12 apostles, from Galilee in the first century. How did the church grow from 12 men from Galilee into over 1 billion strong throughout the world? That's kind of mysterious, right? There's some internal power that made it happen that we can't really see. It's a spiritual power. That's one way to interpret the parable. Another name for the parable is the parable of the patient farmer. In this case, interpreters put the emphasis not on the seed, but on the farmer, right? So again, if you've ever grown a garden, or even more, if you planted trees, like if you've grown an orchard, patience is not just a virtue, it is necessary. It's absolutely necessary. You just have to wait. You can't hurry things up when it comes to gardening or growing trees or growing an orchard or growing a field of wheat, which is probably what Jesus is envisioning here, a crop of wheat. You have to wait. You have to be patient. So in this case, Jesus is talking about, from this point of view, Jesus can be revealing to the apostles that they are going to have to be patient with the ministry of the kingdom, that the kingdom is going to grow as it spreads throughout the world, but it's not going to be like a lightning bolt that just all of a sudden the kingdom is present. It's going to be a process of growth and development that's going to take time, right? And then finally, other scholars would call this the parable of the earth producing of itself. And there, the emphasis is similar to the first interpretation, which is that the kingdom grows of its own power, right? The kingdom is not something at the end of the day that we do. We can help the spread of the kingdom, but ultimately it's something that has its origins in God and in God's activity. God is the author of the kingdom of God, and therefore it's his power that's going to make it grow and spread throughout the world. In the same way that at the end of the day, God is the author of nature. And so although there are secondary earthly material causes that can, that make plants grow and make trees grow, at the end of the day, the primary cause of everything that is God himself. So the power that makes all of creation flourish ultimately is the power of God, right? So those are just some different ways to interpret this first parable of the kingdom. And I think for me, at least, the key that interprets it and focuses on the heart is the verse, "He knows not how." I really think you could call this the parable of the seed that grows mysteriously. Like at the end of the day, we don't fully understand what life and what growth even are and how they all work in the natural world. There are mysteries of the natural world, even to this day. I mean, this is 2,000 years ago, but we still haven't fully conquered all of the mysteries of the natural world. How much more the mysteries of the kingdom? There are going to be things that take place that we can't fully comprehend, fully understand. There's an intrinsic, mysterious element to the way the kingdom spreads. That's the first parable. Now let's turn to the parable of the mustard seed, the second parable.